Hello everyone, welcome to this webinar and I'm Arun Kumar, working as email delivery engineer in Zoho, and I'll be your host today. We all know that email deliverability plays a crucial role in determining your email campaign success. Today we will be discussing the best practices you need to follow to achieve maximum deliverability. Today we are pleased to welcome Mr. Matthew Reynolds, a digital marketing industry expert and Certified International Privacy Policy Canada, CATP and CATC, with nearly 2 decades of experience in email marketing. Matthew is Listbased Director of Privacy and Industry Relations and the Vice Chair of Email Experience Council, the Director at Large with the Coalition Against Unsolicited Commercial Emails, Marketing Chair with the Art Indicators Working Group, that is BIMI Working Group, and the founder of Canadian Email Summit, and he is a trusted industry expert recognized as 2019 Email Experience Council of the Leader of the Year, speaking frequently at email marketing and technology conferences around the globe, and maintaining his celebrated blog called emailkarma.net. Alright, what Matthew has to offer about email deliverability is valuable, and by the end of this webinar, I'm sure we'll be able to take away ideas for your business. Before we go ahead with this webinar, please let us know if you have any communication tips. Please start out as soon as possible. And during this webinar, if you have any questions, we'd love to hear from you. You can send your questions to us by using the questions tab, and we'll be having a short Q&A session at the end of this webinar to accommodate your questions. So for those who joined us again, so welcome everyone. Today's topic is why generic email sending practices won't guarantee inbox placement. So it's all about are we practicing the same? Are we following the same industry practices, or we following the same email marketing technologies, the same practices during this pandemic situation? So I have a couple of questions. I think this is a good start with this particular topic. Matthew, what is the potential of email marketing? That is how exactly helps during this pandemic situation, and how it's going to be an important one in future.
Yeah. First off, thanks for inviting me. I'm looking forward to it. So I think email is important right now because having everyone sort of dispersed at home in various countries, there's certain different things around how restricted travel is for individuals, whether they can freely move about and exercise, or they have to stay home. Email is a communication tool that reaches people wherever they are. So if you're at home, if you're on the road, if you're traveling somewhere, email is with you all the time, and it also waits for you. I think that's an important thing. Exactly. Especially if businesses are closed and they're not currently able to have shoppers, if you will, or consumers enter their premises, or at least here where I am. And businesses are just slowly starting to open back up. So during the pandemic, email has been very important to communicate to those stores that were open, say grocery stores and pharmacies as an example, around policies they had implemented to keep people safe. Things that have maybe changed, requirements in regards to, if you're a shopper, please wear a mask when you come in, as an example, or, we're limiting store hours, those types of things. Incredibly important communications for individuals wanting to carry on business with these organizations. Exactly. And then as we move forward, just the second half of your question, as we move forward, it's going to be important to continue for businesses that are just starting to open back up to share some of those similar processes, what they're following in regards to how they're opening, how they're limiting interaction with consumers, as well as continue to put the right message to their consumer in front of them as best they can. One last thought on that, a lot of businesses around my area have stopped doing paper flyers. So they're going completely digital at this point so that they have less waste and they have less opportunity for transfer of germs between consumers.
Exactly, yes. So I think it's a good start, what are the major points marketers, every email marketer should consider during this pandemic situation from the traditional email practices?
I think.
Yeah.
Pardon me?
Yeah, any couple of major points every marketer should focus on during this situation.
Yeah, I think communicating policy changes, communicating what your staff is doing, or some of your programs changes. Those are very important informational messages. But I think also being sympathetic to people in regards to understanding that everybody's living a bit of a different normal right now. People's interactions with their neighbors, with their friends, with their families are a little different. And just being sort of compassionate to the situation. One example where I think there's a marketer right now sort of missing the point. A lot of things are going to be closed or restricted for some time. I'm still getting a certain individual hotel emailing me regularly about booking vacations and booking trips to their location. When likely I won't be going there anytime soon. But I understand they're also trying to carry on business, but they're sort of forgetting that piece about limiting travel right now and limiting interactions and those types of things. You can come and stay and you can dine in our local restaurants. None of the restaurants are open right now, so it's a bit of a challenge to say, yeah, I want to go and do that, eat in my hotel room.
But it's not a right time to go with it. Yes. Alright, so we pretty much covered what is the best things that the marketers should follow during this crisis. But how ISPs and mailbox providers reacting exactly? And I would like to have a couple of things to cover that thing. Like I do see there are a few updates, and it's not about just during this crisis time, but there are a few updates and few features and few changes are going around from the mailbox service providers like Gmail or Yahoo or Microsoft. So throughout all the major mailbox providers, even if that includes ISPs as well. So what's your thoughts about this? About these changes?
Well, I think what we've heard validity during the last couple of months is right at the very beginning, marketers and brands were reaching really deep into their messaging files, reaching out to people they haven't communicated in a long time, reaching into sort of that low engagement area of their network, into their data files, and sending sort of these relationship messages about the policy change. But what that actually did is it actually increased the number of Spamtraps that were hitting, the number of disengaged users that were essentially reporting their messages as spam, or simply ignoring their message, which drives your reputation, downwards and in a negative direction. So we certainly saw that happening at the very beginning, and then I think as we progressed, people sort of calmed down in regards to the normal, like the abnormal scope of people they were trying to reach, and kind of reined it back in sort of to these smaller groups that they normally talk to, or their more engaged file. So that initial rush, we saw a huge increase in those types of behaviors, and then we saw it back off over time. So I think that ISPs reacted like their machine learning and their anti-spam solutions should to an increase in messages that are not giving positive indicators for those processes. So they're sort of just looking into normal behavior, but for brands that tend to their normal engaged file, to their sort of normal content, especially if they were already enabled for e-commerce, we didn't see a huge significant change in a lot of their practices or in their reputation. It was really those brands that dug deep into that unengaged file that had some problems.
Okay. All right. So let me break down and detail, how the major mailbox providers like Gmail, Yahoo, and Microsoft, and the recent updates and the recent changes in the system. So let me start with Gmail. We know recently Gmail come up with many updates like whether it is like AMP or the annotations. How these changes will help email marketers to achieve better inbox placement rates.
Yeah, so I think by providing a richer environment for consumers to engage with messaging, especially with things like AMP, you have a bit more of a website feel in the messaging for some of those. It shows the filters, it shows the providers that So people are actually engaging with your brand. It allows you to put more content in front of your consumers to give them more opportunities to work and build that positive engagement, that positive reputation that you're looking for. Same thing with annotations. Annotations allows you to maybe call out a bit more of a special or a promotion, use a bit of a different hero image in front of the consumer for the messaging they're looking at. And really gives you that opportunity to sort of wow your customer and try to move them from that mid-tier engagement level into more of a high-tier engagement level where they're more interested in focusing on working with your brand and shopping or looking at your content.
I think they've been focusing on user experience when it comes to AMP. The email marketers or the email receivers can do everything in their email itself. They don't want to go to another website and they don't want to do any actions about it. They can do whatever in the email itself. So adopting an AMP and annotations and considering about the smart unsubscribes, the banner alerts. So I think these are the bigger updates from the Gmail here. So how the user engagement is important to Gmail. Like we see there are many banner alerts like this email has a phishing link, and before going and clicking the link be aware of it, and this email has been marked as spam by another user before. So this domain got many spam messages, some banner alerts like that. So what's your thought on this?
Yeah, so this seems to be a bit of like I would look at it as a continuation, if you will, across some other Google products. So even within search, within the Google search, they have banners that potentially show up if a website's been compromised or hacked. They have their safe browsing tools to show you if they believe a website has been compromised. And what they've done is they've taken some of those pieces, they've brought it into the Gmail platform, and they've really sort of looked at it and said, how can we utilize our safe browser list for looking at potentially compromised sites and implement stuff like that into the Gmail platform. And what it allows them to do is it allows them to build more confidence for consumers in regards to the sender that's sending this message gets a lot of spam complaints. Well, maybe I don't want to read this anymore, or this message maybe is sending me to a compromised site, or my friend has been compromised and sending me messages. So they're really just trying to put notices and information in front of consumers to help them with their own security and their own safety, if you will, within the platform and on the internet in multiple places, and sort of have a consistent experience across the Google network of products.
So that's the reason changes from this, and let's we go and look at whatever Yahoo brings them in. I think we all know, Yahoo started supporting Bini and the new authentication technology, and how exactly it will help even marketers to improve the engagement or to improve their inbox placement, to improve their branding by targeting the Yahoo users and by visualizing their logos in their emails.
Yeah, so there's a few pieces to this, right? I think first off, in order to implement something like Bini, you have to take the steps to properly authenticate your mail. Right? Bini has a dependency on DMARC being at some level of enforcement. So you have to be using DMARC at either a quarantine or a reject level, which means you've taken the time to properly authenticate your mail with SPF, your mail with DKIM, or domain key identified mail. And so you've taken some steps to actually really make sure you understand your email infrastructure. And then sort of as the next piece of that, you can implement Bini. And when you implement Bini, and it's properly done, so your images are proper and hosted on secure sites, and eventually you'll have a secure certificate to go with it. You're going to start seeing your logo show up in the mail client. Right now in Yahoo mobile desktop, or the mobile client as an example, it shows up right in the inbox. On the web client, it shows up once you've opened the message, and it's showing sort of the brief header at the top. You'll see the logo next to the from address and such to really indicate to consumers that this is a legitimate message, this is a message that has taken the steps to protect them and to protect the domain and brand from people trying to maybe manipulate them or trick them into phishing or spoofing type situations. As well as, it takes some of the responsibility, if you will, away from the mailbox provider to say, am I displaying the right logo? There have been many situations in the past where we've seen the wrong logo displaying, which actually can negatively impact your reputation based on some of the older systems that were in place.
Yeah. So what are the other rules are yet to be followed? This is Yahoo start implementing it in beta version. So how they are supporting Bini and which mailbox provider?
Sure, yeah. So on the sort of the next steps for Bini, if you will. So Google has announced that they're going to be supporting a pilot of Bini this year. So we're currently working on the details there, and unfortunately I can't share all of them with you. But it's going to be a limited pilot in regards to the brands that will be able to participate. We will be sort of sharing more information around that as a Bini group, if you will. Shortly, we just actually released our very first sort of what is Bini primer video on binigroup.org. So if you're interested in learning a bit about what it is, here the chair of the organization and the lead product manager for Yahoo talk about Bini and how they're implementing it. So it's coming. More ISPs are interested. There's a handful of others. I can't name them at this point. But international ISPs are looking at it, and we're very excited that people are piloting and looking at adoption.
Yeah, that's really going to help email marketers to share their own brand in email things so that make sure the users and recipients will recognize their brand, the sender's brand, and make sure they're not phishing or scamming in the one day. So yeah, it's going to help the email marketers. And I know there are some other updates from Verizon group, and I know this is still in the beta version. They start doing feeds for email delivery feeds and campaign performance feeds for marketers or to the ESPs. So how is that like? Probably a couple of solutions of what it is exactly, what they are intended to.
Yeah, so the team at Yahoo specifically has been a little bit vocal around open rates and their inaccuracies as they see them. Whether it's prefetched images triggering opens for marketers, or even in some cases, solutions clicking links and things like that, which may also report as opens in the various email platforms. Any link clicked, you can't click a link without opening a message, but now we have these security bots that are doing just that. So they've looked at alternate solutions. They've looked at different ways that maybe they can provide some of their insights back to marketers. So they have a new data feed that comes. Currently, I know they've integrated with at least one ESP. There are other platforms and solutions that they're looking at integrating with. And it's just going to be sort of a more detailed view from the other side that traditionally email platforms and marketers haven't been able to see, to say, this is what the mailbox provider sees in regards to my engagement metrics versus what I see. And honestly, at this point, I haven't seen sort of a difference to see the two. It is something I believe that we're working on. I don't have details or timelines or anything like that that I can share on that.
Still, it is an big version. We don't know enough about when it will come up. So and going forward, I would like to take a couple of things from Microsoft. As we know, Gmail has been adding ARC and authentication changes for a while, but recently we do see Microsoft signing them as well. And along with this, we do see CompAuth and adding in their mail address. So how the email marketers should handle these changes towards spam placement? Because I can see like some of the email marketers don't concern about email authentication. They simply sign up until getting their list and they start sending emails. So the mailbox providers starting doing changes in their filtering system based on this authentication. So how exactly this will help to landing in their emails in spam folder. So how can they can come out of it?
Yeah, so specifically when it comes to things like the comp off algorithm that Microsoft is putting into the headers now, I think the big thing to understand is they are looking for authentication against the mail from. So they want to be able to say that somewhere in the message, either the SPF record aligns properly with the mail from, or a DKIM record aligns with the mail from, as opposed to just the sender from. So in some cases, if you will, an email provider may send mail using a domain that's on their own SPF. And so it's not using the client domain. And they may find their own domain key against a network level domain key. However, if the client doesn't also sign their own domain key associated with the message, what's going to happen is you're going to start to see pop-off failures. And we're going to basically say, well, the email address that the consumer sees doesn't authenticate anywhere within the message. So we think that it could potentially be spoofing or phishing, and they may give you some type of indicator saying that, we can authenticate this message properly, even though it's a perfectly legitimate message. It's just the way that they're starting to say, how do we get brands to take better ownership of their messages? And really that goes back to sort of that whole discussion around domain alignment, DMARC, SPF, DKIM, and we're starting to just sort of see the different mailbox providers come at it from slightly different directions, but really as a way to sort of herd the marketing community and the larger business community in general towards properly authenticating mail.
Yes. So, our suggestion to the marketers, they have to authenticate their domain before they're sending any email to any email service providers.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's incredibly important to authenticate your mail properly, and to authenticate with your own domain, instead of just relying on your providers to do that for you.
Yes. So I think we can talk about the Spamtraps. So I think we pretty much covered about how email authentication and how important it is to the mailbox providers to classify whether it is a spam email or a genuine email. So email authentication plays a major role, obviously. So I would like to talk about the Spamtraps. We know Spamtraps are the major factors to the domain reputation and the inbox placement. As we know, there are many types of Spamtraps like recycled or typos or pristine, and how exactly marketers can avoid them to have a better domain reputation. For instance, even marketers won't know whether they are getting the spam traffic or not. So what are the basic suggestions they can go and do about it?
So I think depending on the type of spam trap you're talking about, there's a few different solutions. So things like typos and pristine, these are addresses, especially pristine, these are addresses that have never existed, potentially domains that have never accepted mail before. So understanding what's happening there at the point of collection, using some type of form validation solution, or in some cases it makes sense to use a confirmed opt-in type setup for your branding and for your messaging. To really sort of validate that the consumer is giving you that address, is giving you a legitimate address. When it comes to typos, it's a very similar thing. You can sort of look at those differently, but I think using a similar, either a confirmed opt-in or an address validation solution, we offer one. You guys might offer one. I'm not sure. But in regards to just sort of real-time form validation, even simple stuff like does the domain exist? Yeah, that's a good start. When it comes to sort of the longer tail recycled addresses, that's where looking at past engagement of consumers, past engagement of subscribers, and saying, this person hasn't opened or hasn't clicked on a link, hasn't taken any action, whether it's in 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, whatever buckets you want to look at, that's where I think you can start to say, if someone hasn't opened or clicked or done any type of engagement in 12 months, are these people that I still want to send mail to? And if you start to remove those people, and I always suggest using a drip campaign, so it's a natural progression as opposed to a hard cutoff. You can start to either try to re-engage those people. If 12 months is your cutoff, start around 9 months with a drip campaign. Are you still there? Are you still interested? Maybe a survey. Just try to get them to sort of wake back up and engage. And then at 12 months, maybe drop them and suppress them going forward. That will really help limit the number of typos. Sorry, not typos. Recycled traps that you're hitting. Mainly because most times you see a recycled address, it's been dormant for a period of 12 months anyway. So if you're looking at that 12-month window, you should have very few recycled traps at that.
Let's say let's take, if a recipient is not engaged for the past 12 months, we can go ahead and, we can try by, having them in our drip campaigns, and we ask them whether they wanted to, continue their, email stream or not. If they are not interested, we can go ahead and avoid them sending in an official campaign. That will stop the recycled spam traffic, right? So so the typos, and we have to be sure whether we have to do opt-in or double opt-in. So always having a double opt-in validation form will be useful to avoid the spam traps for the domain.
But I think even with the typos and recycled, so if those make it onto your list as an example, if you're following some type of engagement program where you're starting to say that these people haven't engaged in a period of time, there are different things you can look at. And, at worst, you're going to keep those addresses on your list for 12 months.
Yeah.
Right? But it might also be interesting to sort of put some type of engagement filter on your brand new subscribers. So say you subscribed and you didn't do anything in the first 30 days. Right? That's usually the most active time period for new subscribers in that first 30 days. And if you've done nothing for 30 days, maybe I send you a different campaign, and maybe I sunset you early because maybe you are a trap or a typo or someone who just gave me a throwaway email address and doesn't care. And then it's those people that are in between those two extremes, and I didn't get engaged right away, and I haven't engaged in a long time, those become your core files. So there's a few different strategies you can do there to limit the impact of typos, pristine, and recycled addresses.
So I think when we talk about the engagement, as you know, many mailbox providers and ISPs measure the engagement rates for domain reputation. Based on the engagement rate, the domain reputation will be updated. So if they have the better open rates, their domain reputation will be higher, and if their open rates were very low and their domain reputation will be down there. So there are many messages that is deleted without even being opened, and some of them were not even delivered to inbox or even spam folders. This results in high unopened rates. How email marketers can have better engagement? So what are your suggestions to have better engagement, to avoid such quarantining the messages or deleting the messages, avoiding the spam placements?
So I think a lot of deliverability issues and a lot of deliverability type of consulting that I've done in the past really focuses on the data input. So, where are you getting your data from? How are you collecting it? What are you asking for at the point of collection? So that's a big part of building a solid, strong data file that you're going to use to continue marketing. I think we talked a bit about that. I would apply very much similar logic to the Spamtrap discussion we just had in regards to, the brand new people, how engaged they are, people that have been on the list a long time, how they're engaged, and sort of that middle group. But I also think when it comes to sort of the idea of new subscribers, building a strong welcome program that really engages them in regards to trying to drive some type of positive messaging, so positive engagement as well, right off the bat, is something that marketers should focus on. So that could be things like, a program I worked on a long time ago. I don't feel too uncomfortable talking about it. Really started with, the first message was, thanks for registering. We're really excited that you're here.
Kind of welcome.
Yeah, a great welcome. The next message was, and this was a local program, so the next was, here's all the information you need to know about your loyalty program and how to collect points. The next message, like a couple of days later, was, here's about how you collect points with our partners. And they gave some examples of partners and some links out to partner websites and stuff. And then the next message was how do you redeem points. So they kind of walked you through the program, not all at once, but in sort of bite-sized, digestible pieces that got people interested in utilizing their membership within that program. And then after 4 or 5 messages, then you got put into their normal marketing scheme. So at that point, you've already built a bit of engagement and a bit of dialogue with the consumer and the brand. So you already have that positive first step. And I thought that was a fantastic program, and it worked really well for them. The challenge became, people are really engaged at first, and then engagement kind of subsides over time. But how do you bring those people that have been on the file a long time back into the program and utilizing it?
Okay. So what about when we talking about the engagement? So how exactly marketers can plan have different list-based engagements? They might have collected the list when years ago, from where the business started, and the new contacts or the existing contacts. How exactly they can engage their list by having a proper segmentation or the proper targeting. So how can they can engage in this?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think it sort of varies based on the business. So a lot of times people will, I guess in year one, it could be gender profile. So, as an example, there's an online retailer that I shop at online, and every time I get the email, 90% of the time, the first thing I look at is the men's clothing in their email. The first 80% of the message is dedicated to women, right? I'm always scrolling down and finding the men's clothing because that's what I'm interested in purchasing, except for a couple times a year when it's my wife's birthday, it's the holidays, Christmas, whatever it happens to be, right? So there's a very few times a year where I'm changing my behavior. So I think without looking at consumer behavior, consumers are going to tell you the things that they're interested in. You can adjust the message in that way. And that's just a simple gender-based solution on what people are looking at. You can also look at, are people shopping for their kids, right? So another retailer here is an example, has books. They're a book retailer. I look at a very specific type of book, but a couple times a year when my nieces and nephews are having birthdays, I'm looking for age-appropriate books for my nieces and nephews. So those types of things. But, if I'm not looking for that regularly, don't put me into your, weekly children's books because I'm never going to engage with those. But I'm going to engage with that, a couple times a year to make sure it's still included in the message, but maybe not the primary focus of the message. So that's sort of another one you can look at. Again, it's still shopping behavior. You can ask. That's another one. I always love the idea of preference centers. So tell me what you're interested in. There's some great preference centers out there to say I'm interested in, sports and music and politics, but I'm not interested in, cooking and whatever else it could be. So you can absolutely ask people for their preferences, and that's a great way to do it. And I would say honestly, if you don't have any of those types of fields or any of that type of data readily available, potentially segment by geographic region. I know, you're based in an IST time zone and I'm based in EST time zone. It doesn't make sense to send us both the same message at the same time because we're about 12 hours opposite.
Exactly.
Right? So one of us is awake and one of us is asleep, and in those cases it doesn't make sense. But if you were to send 9 a.m. IST and 9 a.m. EST, the chance of one of us or both of us being awake in that time zone at that time is significantly greater, and the chance of engagement is going to be higher. So, look at geographic buckets, gender buckets, past behavior buckets, age-related, and it's such a unique situation for the business. I don't know if there's a simple answer to say, we'll just go forth and do that.
Yeah. So we have, what the details that we have, we can put this list into different, buckets. When it comes to previous open, previous engaged time, or preferences, or gender, or location. So that would be, better to engage a list, right?
Yeah, and you can absolutely look at, even the segments of openers and non-openers. That's your first segment. Say, what am I doing differently for non-openers? Or what can I do differently for non-openers to make them openers? And if you have a bunch of openers and a fewer selection of purchasers, how do I get my non-openers to be openers and my openers to be purchasers? And then the purchasers to become advocates, right? So there's always little segments that you can look at that way, and it just comes down to sitting down and trying a bit, right? Trying it out, testing, picking a segment. I would say, pick one or two things to test at any given time. Don't go out and be like, I'm going to test color and placement and gender and geographic all at once, because all of you have too many variables to understand what works and what fails. Pick one at a time and test until you get the buckets you like. And if you're missing data, surveys. Send a survey and ask for some data. Consumers, when they feel comfortable with your brand, they're happy to give you that information.
Yes, that's a great solution to have a better list management. So moving forward, I think we can talk about the bounces and the email throttling. We know bounces also plays a major role on the domain reputation. Bounces, when we talk about this particular topic, there are two types of bounces, right? So hard bounce and soft bounce. How the bounces will impact on email delivery performance, and why email marketers should avoid bounces. Let's say hard bounces will have 500 error codes, user unavailable, resident not found, and when it comes to soft bounce, the 4 error codes temporary failures in the systems, policy errors, etc. So why senders should consider about the bounces, and how exactly it will impact their domain reputation?
Yeah, so there's definitely a number of things. I would suggest that senders, any marketer, gets to understand what bounces are, and specifically the types of bounces that their messaging is receiving. So they're receiving a large number of user unknown errors. To me, that reads with a data hygiene issue. The data hygiene issue, ISPs are going to start to look, mailbox providers are going to start to look and say, why are you trying to send so many invalids? Potentially you're hitting more spam traps as well. So you're going to start to see some of that negative, behavior in regards to high hard bounce rates. In that case, indicate that you maybe need to clean your list. What you'll also see is typically a gradual increase or escalation. You might get some deferrals to say your reputation is not very good, send slower. And if you ignore that, you're going to start to get more of those, and they're frequently, and your reputation is going to continue to decline. And at some point, you might get your mail is no longer welcome here because your reputation is so poor. So understanding what your bounces are, watching for shifts and changes of your bounces, or an increasing number of soft bounces, because eventually those soft bounces become hard bounces, and those hard bounces become bigger problems in regards to managing your data file, potentially invalidating people inappropriately. So reading your bounces, understanding what they mean, understanding how to react earlier, will help you go back into some of those things we've already discussed around list hygiene and targeting of different segments of your list and things like that. And I always like to look at data in different ways. I like to look at bounces overall. I like to look at bounces by domain. I like to look at, if it's possible, bounces by source. So I've talked about this in other talks that I've been on in regards to, if I have 10 list sources where I've been collecting addresses with, webinars and in-person events and my website and maybe a partner and, maybe someone bought a list and all these different sources, right? So if you can look at your behavior by source, you might actually be able to indicate and say, these 4 sources out of the 10 perform exceptionally well. I want to invest way more money in those sources. And then you look and say, well, these 4 sources are behaving incredibly bad. The high bounce rates, high complaints rates. I'm going to invest less or not at all in those sources. And you can actually change the quality of your list by being able to determine the input source as well.
So yeah, that is what. So insurance bounces will definitely gonna save our domain reputation, right? So whenever we try to invest in the new source to come up with to get the context or get the recipient, we need to focus and need to check the reports of the campaign, like are we getting high bounces or not, whether it is hard bounce or whether it is soft bounce, what sort of hard bounce it is, and so how exactly what is my domain reputation. So considering all the factors, bounces gonna definitely gonna impact your domain reputation. So yeah, every email marketer should be concerned about the bounces. They have to go ahead and check with their reports as well.
Your bounce will also give you an indication if your reputation is changing.
Yeah.
And whether it's changing in a positive or negative way. So like I said, your soft bounce counts are increasing, your reputation is decreasing. If your other bounces are starting to improve and you're getting less bounces, your reputation is increasing. Same with spam complaints, right? I hear a lot of times people say, well, I'm not getting any spam complaints, so my reputation must be good.
Yeah.
The problem is nobody complains about messages already in the spam folder, right? So if you have 0 spam complaints, you're probably in the spam folder already.
Yeah.
Or maybe not delivering at all. So not to say that complaints are good, but in the complete absence of complaints, assuming you have a bad reputation, if you stay below sort of that acceptable threshold of, 1 per thousand-ish, it's likely that the users that forgot to subscribe. If you're getting into that, 5 or 10 per thousand, you certainly have other problems in regards to data. So, there are lots of different pieces you can look at in regards to measuring your reputation, and understanding when it's bad. Even the Google Postmaster Tool page, Microsoft SMBS, the new Verizon data feed, those are going to be different tools that you should look at in regards to understanding what your current reputation is, and maybe looking at places you can make adjustments and changes.
Exactly. So yeah, I think we came to the end of the webinar, and I would like to have a quick a short note about the best practices that email marketers should follow by covering all those topics.
So in summary, right? So delivery issues start at data collection. Right? If you have really solid, good data practices, and you have really good data shepherding and data management and data hygiene practices, chances are you're going to have really good, solid data delivery as well. Add into that the type of messaging that you're sending. So data across the whole spectrum, if it's good, you're not going to have any problems. But if you have bad data inputs, you're probably going to have delivery problems. Maybe not right away, but you're going to have delivery problems. Then adding on to that, authentication is super important because it protects your brand, it protects your consumers, it allows the mailbox providers to understand that you approved, you authorized, and sent this message, that you put the effort in to make sure that it's secure in that sense, that the IPs are authorized, the domain keys are aligning, your DMARC set up, maybe you've even taken the next step to get BIMI certified, or BIMI authenticated, have that set up. And that's really going to help the consumers and mailbox providers have those data points that yes, you're behaving appropriately and behaving well. And then I think, engaging in groups like this and discussions like this and education like this goes a long way as well to help people understand, what's changing. What I was doing a year ago is completely different from what I should be doing right now. And it's probably completely different what I'll need to do in another year. So, just staying up to date is also very, very important in regards to making sure your practices are where they should be and you have the best chance for your messages.
Yeah. So yeah, I think we are up for it, and thank you so much for joining with us, Matthew. We're looking forward to talk to you soon as well.
Great. Thanks very much for having me, and I hope everyone had a great day.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Matthew. Thank you all for attendees, and this webinar is recorded, and we will share the videos as soon as possible. Thank you. Thank you everyone for joining with us today. Bye, Matthew.
Thank you. Bye-bye.